Mr. Lazy by Roger Hargreaves. Hello boys and girls, today we're going to read Mr. Lazy by Roger Hargreaves. Mr. Lazy by Roger Hargreaves. Mr. Lazy lives in Sleepyland, which is a very lazy looking and sleepy-like place. The birds in Sleepyland fly so slowly that they sometimes fall out of the sky. The grass takes so long to grow it only needs cutting once a year. Even the trees are lazy looking and sleepy-like. And do you know what time everyone gets up in Sleepyland? They're the sleepy trees, sleepy flowers, sleepy birds. The answer is they don't get up in the morning. They get up in the afternoon. And incidentally, this is what a Sleepyland clock looks like. Can you see the numbers here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything takes so long to do. There's only time for 4 hours in a day. Oh, wow. Anyway, this story starts with Mr. Lazy being fast asleep in bed. In Sleepyland, they call that being slow asleep. Not fast asleep, it's slow asleep in Sleepyland. He spends rather a lot of time in bed. It's his favourite place to be. There's Mr. Lazy in bed in Sleepyland. He opened his eyes, yawned again, and went back to sleep. There he is, Mr. Lazy, yawning. Later, Mr. Lazy opened his eyes again, yawned again, and went back to sleep again. There's Mr. Lazy. Much later, Mr. Lazy got up and went to make his breakfast. We say breakfast, although it really was tea time. He put the kettle on to make some tea. Kettles take 2 hours to boil in Sleepyland. Then he toasted a slice of bread. Bread takes 3 hours to go brown in Sleepyland. Toast never gets burnt there. There's Mr. Lazy, there's his toast. His 3-hour toast and his 2-hour tea. While he was waiting for his kettle to boil and his bread to toast, Mr. Lazy went into the garden of Yawn Cottage, which is where he lived. He sat down on a chair, and you can probably guess what happened next. That's right. He yawned again and went to sleep. There's Mr. Lazy yawning and going to sleep in the chair in the garden. Oh, page sticker. This one's tough. Hang on a second. Oh, this one's really tricky. Are you having difficulty turning the pages? I think it's going to be a lick the fingers affair. Oh, got it straight away. Suddenly he woke up with a jump, which is something that doesn't happen very often to Mr. Lazy. And the reason he woke up with a jump was because of the noise. "Wake up," said the noise. "Wake up, wake up, wake up." There were 2 men standing in front of him. There's Mr. Lazy starting with a jump. Oh, I wonder who's in front of him. "I'm Mr. Busy," said one of them. "And I'm Mr. Bustle," said the other. "Come along now," said Mr. Bustle busily. "We can't have you sleeping all day," added Mr. Busy, bustling Mr. Lazy to his feet. "But who are you?" asked Mr. Lazy. "We're Bustle and Busy," they replied. "Oh," said Mr. Lazy. "There's Bustle and Busy. Or it could be Busy and Bustle. Who knows?" "Come along now," said Mr. Busy. "We haven't got all day." "But," said Mr. Lazy. "No time for buts," said Mr. Busy, "or ifs," added Mr. Bustle. "There's wood to be chopped and beds to be made and floors to be cleaned and the coal to get and the windows to polish and the plates to wash and the furniture to dust and the grass to cut and the hedges to clip and the food to cook. And the clothes to mend," added Mr. Busy. There they are, and there's Mr. Lazy looking a little bit miserable. "Oh dear," groaned Mr. Lazy in a daze. "The wood to clean and the beds to get and the floor to cut and the coal to cook and the windows to make and the plates to mend and the furniture to chop and the grass to wash and the hedges to dust and the clothes to clip." He'd got it all wrong. He got it all completely wrong. He was in such a daze. Poor Mr. Lazy's in a bit of a muddle. Mr. Busy and Bustle are going to keep him very busy. Then Bustle and Busy set Mr. Lazy to work, chopping and making and cleaning and getting and polishing and washing and dusting and cutting and clipping and cooking and mending. Not to mention all the fetching and carrying. Poor Mr. Lazy. There he is, washing and chopping and mending and fixing. Now, they said when he'd finished, it's time for a walk. And off they set on the longest walk Mr. Lazy had ever been on. Mr. Lazy is one of those people who never walks when he has a chance of sitting down and never sits down when he has a chance of lying down. He's so lazy. There's Mr. Lazy, miserable on his walk. Sometimes Auntie Katie goes out for a walk and sometimes she doesn't feel like it either. But walking's good for you. But this day he had no choice. They made him walk for miles and miles and miles until his legs must have worn right down to his body. Poor Mr. Lazy, walking for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. Oh, gosh. Well, nearly. Oh, got it. When they arrived back at Yawn Cottage, Mr. Busy said, "Right, now, go for a run." "Oh no," groaned Mr. Lazy. "When I blow this whistle," said Mr. Bustle, producing a whistle, "you've got to start running, as fast as you can," added Mr. Busy. Mr. Lazy groaned a deep groan and closed his eyes. Ugh, running. Mr. Bustle put the whistle to his lips, whistled the whistle. Went the whistle. Mr. Lazy, poor Mr. Lazy started to run, but his legs weren't getting him anywhere. It's a bit like when Auntie Katie runs. He opened his eyes and looked down to see why. And the reason his legs weren't getting him anywhere was because he was sitting on a chair in the garden. And there was no sign of Mr. Busy and Mr. Bustle. It had all been a terrible dream. And the whistle was the whistling kettle boiling in the kitchen. He'd just woken up from a dream. Mr. Lazy heaved a sigh of relief, and he went into the kitchen and sat down to have his breakfast and to think about his dream. But you know what happened next, don't you? There he is, sitting in the kitchen, thinking about his dream. "Wake up, Mr. Lazy! Wake up, wake up, wake up!" Wowee! Maybe it's Mr. Bustle and Mr. Busy again. Mr. Lazy by Roger Hargreaves.